Hello again, everyone. This video is going to be one of the harder ones to get through. It's going to be discussing the facts and statistics about the impact of gun violence on LGBTQIA plus people. And it's not only guns, but the majority of attacks on the community is done by guns. And for those of you that are pro guns and stuff, I'm not against guns. I'm against idiots that want to use guns to harm other people. But I'm not against guns themselves. So, basically, all people should feel safe in their homes, schools, communities, churches, anywhere and everywhere that they go. But sadly, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, genderqueer, non-binary, the list goes on. People face higher risk of becoming victims of gun violence. Unfortunately, discrimination and historical lack of tracking of sexual orientation and gender identity makes it impossible to understand the full loss of life due to violence against members of the LGBTQIA plus community. The more data that is being collected in recent years have shown some very dangerous trends that are emerging. Even with generational shifts in acceptance, LGBTQIA plus students and young people are victimized by gun violence at higher rates. Some mass shootings, violence, and hate crimes that involve the community. One of them that sticks out really largely in the community is the massacre at Pulse nightclub. And it's a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida. It was the second worst gun violent attack in American history, where 49 people were murdered as they peacefully joined together in community anti-dance. The shooter used an assault weapon with high-capacity magazine. The victims and survivors were predominantly Latinx LGBTQIA plus people. There is a song, it's called 49 Lives. I cannot remember exactly who sings it, but that song come out after this massacre. It's on YouTube. I will try to post it to my community page later. But anybody that has looked that up that doesn't know about it, I've got a couple of videos for the anniversary last year in June. I think I still have my video up where I named all of the victims. And then another one was the LGBTQ plus people are more than twice as likely to be victims of gun violence than their cisgender and straight peers, at 4.6 versus 11.5 per 1,000 people. Additionally, nearly 20% of all hate crimes are motivated by sexual orientation and or gender identity bias. Guns can make these crimes all more deadly. In fact, nearly 8 in 10 homicides of black trans women are by a gun. LGBTQIA plus youth disproportionately face violence in school. Notably, 29% of transgender youth have been threatened or injured with a weapon on school property, compared to 7% of cisgender youth. That is, nearly 1 in 3 trans youth are threatened or attacked with a weapon at school. 16% of gay and lesbian youth have been threatened or injured with a weapon on school property, compared to 7% of straight youth. More than 10% of bisexual youth have been threatened or injured with a weapon in school. LGBTQIA plus students face bullying at more than double the rate of others. 43% of transgender youth have been bullied on school property, compared to 18% of cisgender youth. Bullying rates also show disparity. 29% of gay or lesbian youth have been bullied on school property, compared to 17% of the straight youth. Now, we can look for warning signs, and you can help prevent gun violence and other harmful acts. It's the whole see something, say something routine. But people who hurt themselves or others often show warning signs before they carry out an act of violence. If you don't know what to look for, it can be easy to miss the signs or dismiss them as unimportant. Significantly, missing the signs can have tragic consequences. 4 out of 5 school shootings, at least one other person had knowledge of the attacker's plans, but failed to report it. Now, more than ever, it is essential to know the signs. Students and educators who participate in the Say Something program, which I will post a link to on my community page in a little while, learn life-saving warning signs. They're taught to recognize signs and get help when their classmates show they may be a danger or need help. Warning signs can include things such as thoughts, feelings, actions, and behaviors. At-risk people can show significant or sudden changes in behavior or personality. There is 10 critical warning signs of violence. 1. Suddenly withdrawing from friends, family, and activities, including online and social media. Bullying, especially if targeted towards difference in race, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. Excessive irritability, lack of patience, or becoming angry quickly. Experiencing chronic loneliness or social isolation. Expressing persistent thoughts of harming themselves or someone else. Making direct threats towards a place, another person, or themselves. Bragging about access to guns or weapons. Recruiting accomplices or audiences for an attack. Directly expressing a threat as a plan. And then number 10, the last one on this list, is cruelty to animals. Now remember, this isn't a complete list of all the warning signs. Exhibiting one of these signs doesn't necessarily indicate imminent violence. When concerned about troubling behaviors, tell a trusted person or call 911 if there is an immediate threat. Now, new data, which isn't really kind of new because this part I come across, it was from July 11th, 2022. But it says, a new report from the Bureau of Justice Statistics highlights just how common violent victimization among women, LGBT people, and trans people are. A new publication from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, Violent Victimization by Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity 2017 to 2020, supports the vast evidence that we already have that LGBT people, and particularly young adults, people of color, women, and bisexual people, are at heightened risk of violent victimization compared to their straight and cisgender counterparts. We already know that LGBTQIA plus people are overrepresented at every stage of the criminal legal system, and the line between victim and perpetrator is often blurry. Many people who commit violent crimes have also been victims of violence and trauma throughout their lives. This new data reinforces that the way to break the cycle is not through punishment and incarceration, but rather support for programs that prevent violent victimization in the first place. Now, with that said, I will also say that I do highly believe in putting people behind bars. Like, I have no problem with watching someone set years and years and years in a jail system after a crime has been committed. And I'm not one of those that's going to be like, oh, well, they have mental illnesses and issues like that. Because a lot of people just play off on mental illnesses when they don't really have them. They just try to work the system, and that's like a whole other topic. I mean, my heart goes out to any victim, even if the victim is the perpetrator at some point. But I do also believe in programs that try to prevent things from happening. You know, that's a whole part of me having this channel, is prevention. I'm really big in true crime. Like, everybody that knows me knows I literally write to serial killers and stuff. Like, I try to find the logic and the illogical. But I can also see the other side of it, to where they did have a hard life, and that is no excuse at all in my book. We all have hard lives. We've all seen stuff. We've all done stuff. You know, what one person does and another person does after they've experienced the same thing or similarly the same thing, you know, that's on them. It's on every one of us how we handle our situations. But that's why I'm not doing a true crime channel. You know, I am doing all of this for statistics for after the fact, or preventative for before something happens. Domestic violence signs, you know, ways to get people out of situations, how to encourage victims to become survivors and not just dwell in the victimization and the re-victimization of things throughout, you know, their life. So I'm one that can actually see all sides. You know, in school the other day we was talking, and my professor asked me, if I give you this topic and I give you an octagon, can you fill out every side to this? And he ended up giving me like 8 different topics, and I was only supposed to choose 2 of them. I was supposed to choose how one plays into the other and write around the octagon all the sides, the outcomes, the way different people view different things and stuff. And I literally turned them all in. I didn't just stop at my 2 for the comparison. So I'm really good at seeing the bigger picture. And that plays into this whole channel setup. You know, it gets kind of complicated being able to view so many different sides to everything. But in being able to do so, it gives me the ability to be more open and understanding. And so I will gladly take all sides of the octagon to every story, every situation, every uphill battle. You know, instead of just being focused on this side and that side. And I've literally said that everywhere I go. But it's easier to say it instead of having to cut it down and typing in, limited characters aloud. Okay, I digressed. Anyway, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people are disproportionately impacted by violent victimizations. In this, I'm going to go over the percentage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals of any sexual orientation in the general U.S. population compared to the percentage reporting violent victimization between the years of 2017 and 2020. So, transgender people that were violated, or like the population, was at 0.11%. The violent victimization by victim characteristics in 2017 to 2020 was 0.27%. And that's only what was reported. Like, there's so much stuff that's not reported. And this includes rape or sexual assault of any kind, robbery, aggravated assault, and simple assault. The bisexual community, the population, is at, or was at 0.73%, but the reports made for just the bisexual community alone was 4.72%. So get that. 0.73% as total population. But there was 4.72% that reported the crimes. And for lesbian and gay individuals, there is 1.39%, but the report rate for all these crimes together was 3.2%. So that means basically each person lived it more than once. And for the bisexual community, that would mean that each person lived it like 3, 4, 5, 6 times. The report is based on data from the National Crime Victimization Survey, or the NCVS, an annual survey collected by the U.S. Census Bureau. The survey asks respondents about experiences of violent crimes, regardless of whether these crimes were reported to law enforcement. For the purpose of this data source, violent crimes included threatened, attempted, or completed occurrences of rape or sexual assault, robbery, aggravated assault, and simple assault. The NCVS collects data on people aged 12 and older, but the Violent Victimization by Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity report from BJS only reports data of people aged 16 and older. So everybody that reported something between the ages of 12 and 16, they were not even in those. They were not in that data. And this is part of how they silence our community. Violent victimization of transgender people. We already know that transgender people face a significant amount of discrimination and violence, according to the 2015 U.S. Transgender Survey. Nearly 1 in 10 respondents were physically attacked because of their gender identity, and more than 54% experienced some form of intimate partner violence. This newest report from the Bureau of Justice Statistics supports that what we already know about high rates of violence against trans people. The rate of violent victimization of transgender people is 2 2.5 times higher than the rate among cisgender people. It is clear that trans people are disproportionately violently victimized. Transgender people account for 0.11% of the population, 16 and older, but are the victim of 0.27% of all violent victimizations reported from 2017 to 2020. Lesbian, gay, and bisexual individuals experience violent victimization at rates far higher than their straight counterparts. Lesbian and gay people experience 44 victimizations per 1,000 people, which was more than twice the victimization rate of straight people, 19 per 1,000 people. Bisexual people experience victimization at almost 7 times the rate of straight people and almost 3 times the rate of lesbian and gay people. Across all measured demographics, race, sex, and age, bisexual individuals have the highest rate of violent victimization. Women of all sexual orientations experience higher rate of victimization. Women of all sexual orientations, they experience higher rates of violent victimization than their male counterparts. The violent victimization rate for lesbian women, for instance, is more than 1.3 times that of a gay man, 50 per 1,000 versus 38 per 1,000. The victimization rate is higher among bisexual women, who are victimized at a rate of 2.3 times that of bisexual men, 151 per 1,000 versus 65 per 1,000. Straight women experience violent victimization at a rate of 19.2 per 1,000 compared to 18.7 for straight men. And unfortunately, the data does not disaggregate trans people by gender, so it is not possible to make a similar comparison. More supports and protections are needed. This data reiterates that what we already know. Society is failing to protect the safety of LGBTQIA people, especially young adults, people of color, women, and bisexual people. Many trans people, for instance, face systemic disadvantages that work together to put them in danger, including anti-trans stigma, including hostile political policies, denial of opportunities, including exclusion from healthcare, social services, and education, and increased risk factors such as engagement in survival sex work. Survivors of violence advocate for intervention that expand funding for affirming services for survivors of violence, including LGBTQIA people and women, with a focus on accessible medical and mental health services. Explicitly include trans, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and queer identities in conversations about intimate partner violence and sexual assault. Expand access to affordable housing, a living wage, and non-discrimination policies that transform survivors' access to basic needs. And encourage implementation of community-based solutions to violence designed by community members who are most affected, such as those incorporating restorative and transformative justice practices. Above all, survivors of violence emphasize rehabilitation over punishment, prevention over criminalization, and accountability through options beyond prisons and jails. Now, like I said, I am not against putting somebody in jail for a crime that they have committed, but I do highly believe in the simple fact that we can educate people, we can bring the world to a place of acceptance, but it's not going to be easy. And the important thing is, if you see something, say something, because silence is violence.